at 11 years old, I'd like end up watching bestiality or, other illegal content. And, just going through that process of escalation and continuing to delve deeper into something that did make me feel ashamed and that I felt the need to keep secret. Keeping such a thing secret from all of your loved ones, that can be traumatic. Half of what I do is coaching people through recovery from the porn-induced sexual dysfunction side of things. Right? They've developed sexual problems related to their chronic porn use, and that part of what I do is relatively simple. And the formula is pretty simple, though there are a lot of nuances to go over. The formula, remove porn permanently, remove masturbation at least temporarily, and introduce regular practice of real intimacy, real sex when you're ready. And for most people, that formula is going to work. The amount of time it takes for that to work varies from individual to individual, but for the most part, that works. Whereas addiction recovery, addiction affects every aspect of your life, every relationship you have, every emotion you have, every choice you make. If you're an addict, it's all interrelated. And so the process of addiction recovery is the process of building the life that you really want and that you deserve, and finding out what your real needs are and striving to fulfill those in healthy ways. It's really like a second puberty, because addiction, it does emotionally stunt people. Addicts, they turn to their addiction of choice instead of processing their problems and their emotions in healthy ways. If they feel depressed or lonely or stressed out, they can use porn, they can drink, they can do whatever. But as you keep pushing away those feelings and those problems, they don't go away. They just get bigger and scarier, and you never learn how to successfully deal with them. You just learn how to numb yourself or escape from them. And when you take away that option, it can be tumultuous and difficult and challenging, but it's also a great opportunity to become a fully mature adult.
Yeah. I'm curious about something that I saw in your course relating to addiction, which is you talk a little bit about trauma as well. And we actually had a specialist therapist in trauma on the podcast. The episode hasn't come out yet, but we spoke a couple of weeks ago. So that was quite interesting. But I found what you wrote very interesting, which is that you described having you described porn use itself as potentially traumatic. Can you kind of expand a bit on what you mean there? Because I thought it was really interesting.
I mean, trauma, it's not something, especially as young people, as children, that you recognize something you've experienced is traumatic. People who grow up in abusive homes, they often don't recognize that it's traumatic. It's just their normal. It's just their life. They might start to realize it if they spend time with friends' families and see, oh, like this family doesn't shout at each other, doesn't hit each other. But usually that won't happen until they're adults and can like look back in retrospect and see, okay, yes, I think that was traumatic. I think it has caused some damage in me that needs processing and needs healing. And to be sure, trauma feeds into addiction. Absolutely. Addiction is a coping mechanism. It's a survival mechanism. It allows you to get through the day, and that's how it begins for so many people. But as it develops and as it continues, it starts to be the main source of problems in your life, and it starts to be a threat to your thriving as an individual. And that's when people realize, okay, something needs to change. I need to get help. And yeah, looking back, when I was first going through this journey, I didn't see any trauma in my childhood because I grew up in a loving family. There wasn't abuse or neglect, and I didn't see myself as a victim of trauma. But as I went through the process of healing, I started to look at it a different way, and looking back and looking at it was kind of the Wild West back in the 90s or in the early 2000s on the internet. One of the ways in which I accessed pornography was through like peer-to-peer file sharing software. There wasn't any tube sites. YouTube didn't even exist. So you see a description and you download the file, but you wouldn't always know what you were getting. So like sometimes at 11 years old, I'd like end up watching bestiality or, you know, other illegal content. And, you know, just going through that process of escalation and continuing to delve deeper into something that did make me feel ashamed and that I felt the need to keep secret. You know, keeping such a thing secret from all of your loved ones, that can be traumatic. You know, fighting with yourself morally, internally about what you're watching, that can be traumatic. Just getting caught up in such a strong super stimulus, especially one that you're ashamed of and that you're keeping to yourself as a young child, that can certainly be traumatic. And it's also traumatic to, you know, fall in love and, you know, want to have sex for the first time and find that your body seems to be broken or seems to be betraying you, and enduring the end of that relationship because of that. You know, that can be traumatic. So I do see some traumas, you know, in my past, and I don't want to like compare traumas. Of course, a lot of people have much worse traumas than I did, but I don't think that people should let that voice inside of them stop them from recognizing that whatever they've experienced, it can be considered traumatic, and it does deserve some attention and some focused healing.